Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name is Joey. This week I am joined by Neil
Hello.
and by Dom.
Hi there.
It's probably the best time in the world to be a Coventry City fan. Would you agree, Neil?
I always agree. It's always the best time in the world, especially to be a Cov fan. And
Has there
when we beat
ever
Middlesbrough
been
at home.
has there ever been a better time to be a Cov fan, Dom?
Well, maybe FA Cup or just immediately after one of those massive wins, but now's a pretty sweet time.
It's all right. Let's do
Yeah.
our moments of the month. Neil, you start first.
Oh, it's month, and I was immediately going for week because talking of the FA Cup, it felt very much like we'd won the FA Cup the other day, where Dabo went and picked up his kids from the corner and was having a great time with them.
Beautiful work.
And it was sort of, it was what a lovely moment, but it also was like, that shows how happy they all are right now playing football and having a good time, because it's not really a normal thing to go and kind of have a little bit of a wander around a pitch with your kid. Not that I have any issue with it at all, but it's just kind of funny to think, well, that's how much they like things right now. They feel like that's kind of acceptable. It's all right to go and pick up your kids and have a little wander around the kid as if you've just won the cup. It's good.
What do you think about Gus helping out?
That was nice, wasn't it? At first, I was like, are you just presuming it's okay to go and hold his baby? He didn't really have much of a say in the matter, but I'm guessing they're probably close friends, because he was just like, I'll take your baby, mate. Go and get the other one. And if it was me, I would kind of obviously feel obliged to give him my baby, but also not be too pleased with him having my baby. I don't know. I don't have a baby, so I don't know exactly what that feeling's like.
Did you see he tweeted a photo about 2 weeks ago that said this would be some five-a-side team or something? And it was like, I think it was 6 players, and it was it was like the 5 players that you'd have to sort of say would be our best players. So it was him, possibly Gyökeres, Hamer. I'm trying to think who else it was, but when you looked at the photo, you were like,
O'Hare.
that's largely, yeah, that O'Hare. You're like, that is pretty much who you'd pick. But then Waghorn was in there, and you were like, you've sticked in there.
You're new.
You're in there because you're in the photo, but I don't know whether you would be in the top 6. Yeah, is what it is. That's nice to think that they're friends, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Is that the moment?
Yeah, it kind of was, but then also triple save Simon Moore. Just because I was really comfortable in the game anyway, but they still could have scored, and I just thought, you don't get triple saves very often. That was very, very good.
He is benefiting hugely from how underwhelming a signing he is, isn't he? Because I think
He's knocking about, isn't he?
I think he's been very good, but I think it's really helped him that he isn't like the 21-year-old goalkeeper just released by Man United or whatever that we'd signed instead. Do you know, like where you'd be like,
Yeah.
he's going to play for England one day or whatever. Actually, he's come in, been very competent, but because people were like, well, who is this guy? People are like, do you know what? I like this guy.
Yes, yeah. That's all I want in the keeper. Who is this guy keeper? That's all I want. I don't want anybody flapping around. Oh, why have I said that? No, he's going to flap around.
He's
But,
been
like,
he's been terribly safe, hasn't he? That's the thing
yes,
that's been
really.
very enjoyable, especially after some of the excesses of previous keepers. That actually he's just looked really and tall too. Which more of that, please. Dom, moment of the month.
Moment of the month. Well, I am probably going to go for more post-match giddiness. The one against Reading, there was just a nice, like the players seemed to come together on the halfway line, did a nice sort of little collective wave and salute at the crowd. It was a nice moment. Felt slightly orchestrated, but it was nice that it was almost nice that it then didn't happen against Middlesbrough. That it just felt more spontaneous than just like sometimes like remember like when Liverpool, like when Klopp first came and they were like saluting the away fans after they just got
It was
like
2-2 against West Brom was the famous one, wasn't it? It was they'd drawn 2-2 and then they'd all
yeah
joined hands in the centre circle and ran
yeah
towards the crowd. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's nice to be recognised on every occasion as fans, but yeah, if it's after win and if it's more spontaneous, that is good.
That's the key as well, because we're very, very good as a football club and as a fan base of, if something works or looks good and we enjoy it, we do it all the time, way too much, and we just spoil it. So I prefer those moments where you just like treat it for what it is in its own little bubble, and then don't do it again for a long time, because otherwise you just spoil it.
What's funny is that my moment of the month was going to be going to a game for the first time since the Rotherham game in Birmingham just before COVID exploded everything. And on the subject of what you're saying there, I heard what I think was possibly its first outing, but I might be wrong, of the Gustavo Hamer song. And I'm not exaggerating to say that I think it probably covered about 40 minutes in total of kind of overall. Never, I'm not sure I could ever remember hearing a song apart from maybe Twist and Shout. But even then, I don't know whether it would have gone on at quite as long as that did at Blackpool. To the point where it was like if you've ever been somewhere hot and you just hear crickets rumbling, is that it really did just sort of form
But
part of the ambient noise.
it's just all over though, isn't it? Every time we do something, I mean, it's like, oh, that's a little bit inventive, isn't it? Like the Bakayoko song, like it's a good song, but like literally the entire journey back from London, it's just like, I've got to sing this relentlessly. And the same goes for the Michael Doyle song. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, guys, it's a good song. Don't celebrate it that much.
Yeah,
We just love when we come up with a good song, don't we? We really
yeah,
do.
we will absolutely do it to death. I mean, the main thing about the kind of, I mean, just being at a game was fantastic, but the main thing, and we're going to talk about this, I guess, as the main thrust of what we talk about tonight, but that the Blackpool game, as well as it being great, just being at a game, it's just, I just feel like it's great watching us at the minute. We look so fun,
Yeah.
and the Blackpool game especially was just so open. You would roughly, we're not going to talk about, we're going to go straight into Middlesbrough and sort of ignore the games that, but because I was at it, I am going to give it sort of 30 seconds. You would have described us as being totally on top from about 30 minutes onwards. And yet in the first half, Blackpool missed four, possibly five really good chances. Like one on one with a keeper chances. You just think we could have realistically been totally on top and 4-0 down at half time. You just think
That sounds about right.
you've got to love a team like that. So yeah. Anyway, right, more of that in Middlesbrough, Neil, which I believe you were into attendance for.
Yeah, I was. I was going to talk about this, and it's been a weird start to season for me because I went to the first game and then I've just been knocking about in different places and various weddings and stuff for a month, and I haven't been to another game since. So all of this stuff was happening, and that I was furious that I missed the Reading game and everything that went around that. So to come back, and it felt like the second game of the season for me, genuinely. So I didn't really have anything in my mind. Matson was still somebody who was all excitable and scared and stuff, and coming, but knowing that we were a comfortable and competent team from all accounts. So it was good to get back, good to take another look at the team. Um, Interesting, I thought, based on everything I'd heard so far, that Alan was drafted into the lineup ahead of Sheaf. That, excuse my approach to this, that smacked very much of, oh, he's done really, really well this week in training, so you've just got to give him a go. But we'll go on to this in a minute.
Well, did you see, just very quickly to interject, did you see that there was news on this today?
No, help me out.
So Robbins has said, whether it's true or not, Robbins has said today that Ben Sheaf had picked up a knock in training.
Oh, really rubbish. I wish I'd read that earlier, and then I'm
Yeah,
looking stuff
apologies.
up.
He did, and
Yeah,
he
no.
said he went as far as saying, in all likelihood, Ben Sheaf would have started that game had he have
Ah,
been completely fit enough. Yeah, I thought it was odd, but yeah, it turns out that there was a reason. But you never know sometimes whether sort of managers do that to kind of protect both players. Sometimes if it's
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
true, and then kind of it saves Sheep's embarrassment and whatever.
I kind of like. Oh, it's a shame because I kind of like the narrative of Alan just playing so well that week that he comes into the pitch and then he continues because the way he played. I mean, we'll go into him specifically, but I mean, I hadn't seen a performance like that from him. I don't think ever. I don't think I've seen him play
No.
that well for us, and which is surprising because obviously he came into the team in League One and he performed relatively okay. You know, he didn't look out of place, but he also didn't do too much on a lot of occasions. He just wasn't really there for us at all last season in the championship year, and so you do worry about him. But I thought he put in a great performance the other day, and it did smack of someone who was really confident, and we couldn't keep out of the team. But the funny thing is now, Sheaf or not, after that performance, yeah, you kind of have to keep him in the team. You don't end up messing about with somebody who's played that well in a game. But if we just revert back to the kind of the team as a whole. So obviously this was my first time of seeing Clark Salter as well. It was my first time of seeing Robbins not trying to shoehorn Da Costa in at right wing back and let Dabo play in his rightful position. And I think we can all agree that that is how it should remain. Obviously we've got the new guy, Todd Kane, in as well. Just a side note, Dom specifically. So Kane's come in. What are your thoughts on that in terms of what that probably means for Da Costa? Because my sense on Da Costa was always that he was our player, and eventually Robbins, we gave him a go. I don't think Robbins necessarily fancies him that much, which is why we've got Kane in.
Yeah, so I think from the sounds of things is we've sort of spent quite a lot of the summer looking for either like a permanent left wing back, and we've ended up with Ian Matson, who's on loan, and we've sort of been trying to figure out how we sort of get cover for him, and we looked at Pat Suarez, he's gone to Charlton now, and like a few other guys, clearly like Josh Reed, for whatever reason is not seen as up to the standard, and sort of came to the end of the window, and Todd Kane's available. He's not left-footed. He's played a bit at left wing back, but he was someone who was available and was probably the best player available given the circumstances, and given that we sort of needed a bit of cover at left wing back. Although it was ironic in the end that in the game on Saturday he came on and played right wing back. I don't know
Well,
whether
that's the question then. That makes absolutely no sense. So you have somebody who can potentially play left wing back, and you decide to put Dabo at left wing back and him at right wing back if he's not a right wing back.
Yeah, I don't know whether it is maybe going back to the Blackpool game when Da Costa came on and played on the left, and it was just that the awkwardness of being fresh into the game and then not on your natural side. Whether Robbins felt that it would be best to have someone who's not quite settled into the game, at least be on their natural side, rather than have to both grow into the game and have to deal with being on the left. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, he's someone who has played a fair amount of championship football, and he is someone who, a few years ago, I remember being seen as quite a bright prospect, as far as sort of Chelsea under 23s who are not going to make the first team go. But he's had to spell at QPR, which obviously hasn't gone great. His form was a bit patchy, but someone who contributed a little bit whenever he played. And yeah, there was a few issues with him and the fans, it seems, and sort of his attitude. He gave an interview last year where he said he was better than the players keeping him out of the team, which didn't go down well. And also he's off the back of a ban for I want to be specific. It's something like using discriminatory language that references nationality or ethnicity. 7-game ban. And from the sounds of things, the actual details of it aren't quite as bad as it sounds. Sort of, it was him sort of reacting to something, but that seemed to be sort of the final straw for him at QPR. He was someone who was sort of sent out the back door. But for us, he's someone who upgrades his team in the same way that sort of Waghorn has come in and upgraded on like Biamu and Bakayoko. I think it's just sort of that, to use a term that's in vogue in politics, sort of leveling up. of the squad in the Championship. He's not necessarily first choice, but he just raises that bar of the squad a little bit.
Cool. That's really interesting. Sorry to labour this point, but I'm still confused. So he's right-footed, but he nominally plays on the left side.
He has played a bit on the left. I know he had a couple of spells there at QPR, not just like slotting in for like 10, 15 minutes when there's been loads of injuries. But he had like a run of games at left wing back for QPR.
Understood, ish.
Yeah.
Sorry. It threw me a little bit. I still couldn't quite work out what was happening there. But yeah, I don't know why I got so obsessed with Todd Kane. But yeah, Dabo, that was the main point, where him playing in his right wing back position is great, and he was once again on Saturday absolutely phenomenal. And after last season not really getting an opportunity to get into his stride, when we all felt he is a championship quality player, I think he's really settled very nicely from the games that I've seen and what I've heard, and obviously the replays and all that sort of stuff. And the game the other day was just it was an incredible performance from him, really, on the right hand side, and certainly as it finished as well when he moved over to the left. I just thought he really stepped up there as well. So well done, that man. I think the game itself, it was. I think you said it right earlier, Joey. We are good to watch. I'm very, very comfortable with us right now, and it's kind of this evolution of how comfortable I've been with us with certain elements of that team for the last 2 or 3 years. They just get sturdier and sturdier. And last year I watched us, and again I was relatively comfortable with us. I felt in defence we were kind of doing things in spite of ourselves. So we were making many, many mistakes. McFadden was making mistakes. Obviously, we gave away a lot of penalties, and we were kind of getting lucky in many regards, where we weren't conceding more than we probably deserved to with how haphazard we were. The game the other day, I felt, barring a couple of moments, we just looked very solid across the back. I also felt like we've got a very clear stance in terms of how we play the game now. Everybody seems to recognise how we want to do things, but it's not the Andy Thorne method of trying to do things because you think they're the right thing, but you're nowhere near good enough or capable of. Well, this is a comfortable approach to playing football. You've got the players each building nicely at the back. I thought Clark Salter brought the ball out really nicely, had a nice stride about him, worked quite neatly with both McFadden and Maatsen on the left-hand side. And I just think there's it just seems to be a real nice shape about us at the moment, and everything's ticking and connecting as it should do. It was a really nice and stark difference between the first game I saw of Maatsen, where he was clearly, an enthusiastic player, but his first game was all hype and excitableness. He was probably a little bit too excitable, and he was jumpy and making errors with his touch and stuff. Whereas the game I saw the other day was an impressive performance by a player who, again, seems to have found his feet as well and is starting to move into his real stride there. I thought he made good use of the space on the left-hand side. He has an air of kind of Ricoh Henry about him, that kind of small player, but doesn't seem to get the best of him, still seems to find a way to make that tackle. I've seen some stats all through the season about him being top of the tackles charts, which is great news. Just for a fullback, you always expect that. But actually, I quite like about this season, stats obviously most of the time are for entertainment purposes, but we are high up on many, many charts right now. We're about individual, it's about duels, it's about XG, all that stuff. You'll see our name pop up and individual players popping up high up, which suggests a high level of performance right now. And the game on Saturday were kind of aligned with that. It really was quite a strong performance, I felt. Middlesbrough were okay. They kind of came up against us. They had some good, strong players. The guy in the wing was decent. I forget his name. Apologies, Middlesbrough. They also had some control in the middle. But it didn't worry me, which is an odd one for opposition fans. And certainly when we've been playing you know, as a COD fan, generally you're kind of a little bit worried about the opposition, and when you see a decent team coming up against you, you start to notice the threat and think they're going to take advantage of that threat. But this was different. I kind of watched them. They looked like they had some good players. There were some big boys in their team. And while it was a threat, I still felt comfortable in and confident in our abilities. And the fact that we're a good, strong team and more in goal is commanding. He seems to keep everybody in check. Domheim is just, metronomic in his performance as per. And McFadzean, while I don't think we'll ever get past some of the wonky passing that he offers in the team, we're also not the same team when he's not there. So you kind of have to take the rough to smooth with him and accept that he is being in the middle of the defense is the right place for him. He's able to do his job, be a little bit manic, but you kind of need that kind of player there. And then as we kind of move forward, obviously we've got this new strike force of Waghorn and Gyökeres, and the one player I would say who's impressed me this season from everything I've seen of him, and just in terms of progression from what I saw of him last year, is Gyökeres. I just think his ability to be an absolute nuisance up front and maintain control of the ball for as long as he deems necessary is really, really important for us this season. And I watched the previous away game, and I felt like he was hauled off incredibly early from that game when he was causing them a lot of grief. I don't think there was any chance that was going to happen against Boro the other day. I just think he was a real nuisance with them. And he's strong. He can carry the ball. He backs himself to knock it and run, which is always good fun from your striker. And I think we've got somebody there who, as long as he can remain fit and continue to knock in a few goals every now and again, I think we've got the makings of a real strong striker up front. And then obviously you've got the new boy Waghorn, who is, by all accounts, and from what I've seen so far, plugging away and doing what he can and starting to link up and starting to make himself kind of seen. And but he needed a goal, and it was important the other day that I think he contributed, because that then just takes that. Sometimes it's an unnecessary weight off him, and I think him and Gyökeres have something, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of move on as we push through the season. The one player who I thought actually had an interesting game and not necessarily his best game was O'Hare. So I back O'Hare most of the time. I think he's very lively, and he gets involved and he gets on the ball. And we did have quite a heated discussion very early on in the season where he put in one of those performances, but there was a disagreement between a few of us in terms of end product, that sort of stuff. If I'm going to criticise him for end product and kind of decisions and just quality of decisions and passing, Saturday probably would have been the game where I did it. I felt like he was very involved, but it just wasn't quite his day, I'd suggest, which was unusual for him because he's usually on the money, I reckon. But he wasn't quite that player on a Saturday, which is a shame for him. But not to worry. I thought as a team we did really well, and I appreciate this is more of a. I've just come back to the football, so I'm giving a bit of an update on how I see things at the moment rather than review of the match. But I just thought it was a really enjoyable game to watch. I thought the atmosphere, 19,000 in the Ricoh, still calling it that, was good fun, and I think we've got the makings of a really solid championship team there. And the goals were great. Jamie Allen rolling the ball through for Gyökeres, who you just knew if he was able to go alongside that defender and knock it, he wasn't getting caught. And for once, a player nudges it past the keeper. You don't see that very often anymore. Our players always tend to try and knock it past it early, and it was nice just to see him have the confidence to take it around the keeper. And quite how they didn't stop it on the line with two players, I don't know. It just somehow
raging.
I've watched it again, and it touch one of their toes and then bobbles over the other player, and you're just like, how has that happened? But we'll take it. I think it was very well deserved, and it just makes me laugh even more that it was against a Neil Warnock team, because those sort of things he's going to be absolutely fuming about. I think he probably mentioned it in the after interview as well. But no, that got us going. We could have conceded. almost straight away after that. If it wasn't for some strong defensive work, I think was that a save by Moore? Was that the triple save, or was it the bar? I don't remember actually. If it was the bar, then it wasn't strong defensive work. If it was the save, yes, it was. But we let them kind of come back at us. But beyond that, I thought we saw it out nicely. And I think of all the people to score, Waghorn getting on the sheet at that point with a really well taken goal. By the
Really
way,
well,
the ball came.
really well
It was,
taken.
wasn't it?
Yeah, I
It was
thought
just
so.
it didn't take. It was just that was instinct. That was good first touch, and then natural instinct. Right, I've got to do something to shape this chance, and it only took the little step over, but that gave him the opportunity. And while it might have been close, it just gave him enough space to get a clean strike on it, where the player couldn't get in front of it, and that was like, yeah, yes, thanks. And what I like about that is I think we've probably got 4 strikers who could probably do the same thing in that position. Where they all seem capable of probably putting that ball in the net. And while we've whinged about kind of level of strikers and quality that we've had in the past, where you kind of have to, taking a punt on whether they're going to be any good or not when they come onto the pitch. I do at least feel that we have 4 strong striking options with us at the moment, and the ability to rotate those is going to be really useful for us as we move through the season. But strong game the other day. Really enjoyed it. Thought it was good atmosphere and well deserved. And it was really nice to see us nudge back up into the top 6, 1 point off top or whatever it is. So that is how I saw it.
Dom, I want to sort of pick up from what Neil's saying there on Waghorn and ask you a question. Did you expect him to be busier like I did, or is my version of what I expected him to be misplaced?
I think certainly sort of the Waghorn of 5 or 6 years ago would have been, I think, more energetic and attack. I always remember him at Leicester sort of playing on the left of a front three, and he was someone who was really busy and just lacked a lot of composure in front of goal. And I think over the course of his career, he's sort of gone the other way, where he's used his efforts better. I sort of expect him to be one of 4 strikers. Like Neil was saying, there's 4 good options there, and I think as long as Jokeres is the partner to them, I don't think it makes that much of a difference who comes in. I think Waghorn just offers, I think, a little bit more energy and presence compared to Golden and Walker, and that's why they're favoured. But I can imagine over the course of the season we'll see all sorts of fun combinations of the options we have. But I think right now, Jokeres, just because of that all-round presence he has, it's not just that he's quick, and it's not just that he's strong. He's got all that, and certainly in the second half, when Middlesbrough were starting to get on top of us, having someone who carried the ball 20, 30 yards up the pitch made such a big difference to us actually having a threat on the counter versus being penned into our own half. And he's really impressed me this season, and I only hope that he just develops a little bit more assertiveness when it comes to the final third. Just seems a few occasions where he gets in decent positions and he's just not quite got the wherewithal just to properly attack those situations. And a few occasions, especially as we saw earlier in his spell at the club, where he seems to struggle to sort his feet out a little bit, but he seems to be going in the right direction.
I think the funniest thing with Jokeres is that over the last 2 years or so, we've sort of mixed between playing 1 up front and 2 up front. And at the point where we've had 1 up front, is we've all kind of gone, I like Biamu, but I'll need him to have a partner. Or I like Godham, but I don't know whether he can hold the ball up well enough to play up front on his own. And now we've got Jokeres, who could really effectively play up front on his own. Robbins is like, he has to be a 2 now. That's absolutely. I've got way too many. I've completely bought too many strikers to now not have someone next to
Yeah.
him. I I can't speak highly enough about him. I can't remember the last time we had a striker in any league who looked. I mean, me and Paul had a sort of jokey argument about the other day about whether it was Callum Wilson or Leon Clark, but that can just do a bit of everything. And like you say, the I mean, he's not the strongest player in the world, but I also don't see him getting knocked off the ball, and his hold-up
Mm.
play isn't kind of the defining factor in a way that it would be for, like a Salomon Rondon of this world or whatever. But that equally is more than happy to be a back-to-goal player. Likewise, the main thing is, I guess you wouldn't look at him and think, yeah, this is a guy that's kind of like a dribbler. But the amount of advancement that we get from him
Mm.
taking the ball forward is ludicrous. I just think he's.
Everything. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on now.
No, just backing up that point. Everything he does is kind of deceptive. Like he doesn't have, like you say, that you can kind of see he's tall, you can kind of see he's strong, you can kind of see he's quick, but he doesn't look any of those things. He doesn't look quick, and yet he will back himself and he will knock it. And he doesn't even look like he has control of the ball very often. And he does have control of the ball. And this is kind of what I wasn't sure about last year. It took me so long to kind of figure him out because he had that sort of sticky feet kind of syndrome where the ball would just remain within his gift, kinda a little bit like Adabola, but it didn't look like he really had much kind of understanding of what he was planning to do. Whereas this year, I don't know whether it's just my perception or my perspective on that. He's probably doing the same thing, and yet I look at it in a totally different light. And he's showing just what he could be for us, and there's nothing standout, and yet everything he does is of a good quality. So it's a really interesting one, and I think we've kind of got all four of our strikers are like that in the sense where none of them has a standout attribute. We don't have anybody quick, but the only thing I would suggest they probably can all do is they can finish, and you'd fancy them to knock the ball away in that waghorn position that he got into the other day. So it's a really really exciting time for our strike force, I think. And what I mean, of all the many options we could go with, I think the one which I probably would least favour, I don't know why I'm saying this for the sake of it, but the Walker Godden one is the one which I would not go with. I would prefer combinations which aren't those two, but just because they're the ones who have the least amount of kind of specific attributes, I think you do need something there. I don't know why I've just said that. There's no reason to slag
Hey,
those two off as a match, but that's
absolutely
just I
fine.
saw it when we brought those two on the other day in the away game. It just felt like that was not the two that you want up front, and rarely are those two that I'd really want up front.
Just before we move on to the back line, is on Jokeres. I should imagine that both of you are either aware of, or have seen, or have read Moneyball, and the thing in there about kind of the certain players being overlooked for an inelegance to their
Yeah,
performance.
Yeah.
I think there's an element of that to Jokeres in that I don't think, like you say, he never quite looks in total control, or he doesn't look like you would expect. People want to see
mm,
Dimitar Berbatov or Dennis Bergkamp, don't they? And with this kind of gliding thing of ultimate control, people feel much more comfortable with a player that
yeah.
looks like that. Whereas Jokeres doesn't, does he? At no point
That's exactly.
does he
Yeah,
look like
really.
there's a plan or that like the ball's under control or anything. But that it is. He's
Yeah,
good. He's
exactly.
really good, really effective, and
And it's
he's
probably our snobbishness, isn't it? It's our snobbishness as fans, like judging that. I mean, I think I always judge Adebola for that, but he's very, very impactful. Just because he doesn't look like he has a clue what he's doing, he still finds a way through. And you're like,
yeah.
okay, well, do it however you see fit, friend. You know that Djokovic is very much, and it's probably one of the reasons why people immediately on your first viewing. I think everybody would look at him and think, not entirely sure what this guy's going. So it just take a little bit of time just to get more comfortable with what he gives you.
The other thing with Gyökeres is that he said this week, and it was one of the things where, unless you're a footballer, you don't really think about it. Is he told either the Telegraph or someone that when they were like, how it's you've had a much better start to this season than you did to you start at Cov or you start at Swansea, and he just said, well, yeah, because I joined both of them teams sort of in the middle of the season. But you know what I mean? I was like walking into a
Yeah,
team
yeah,
that already existed and they'd already got a style of play and I wasn't used to it. You're like, oh yeah, of course. Yes. Oh yeah, sorry. Imagine
yeah,
imagine starting a new job and it'd be like, right, okay, so if you could just get on with it.
yeah. Yeah.
You'd be like,
New
what
business, everybody.
what about the systems or anything? They'd be like, you'll learn that, but if you just do it straight away, you should be pretty much perfect right from the bat, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Um, anyway, right. So that's enough of that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, partly because I feel like I owe him something of an apology, is because I actually got to a game for the first time in 18 months, which is ludicrous, is I got to see Carl McFadzean, who you talked about, in the flesh against Blackpool.
Mm.
And I wanted to offer something of an apology because there was a point in that game in the second half where I turned to Paul and said, credit where it's due, I shouldn't have been so gobby and chippy about players that I've only ever seen on iFollow because it's not the same, is it? You can't really judge a
Interesting.
performance off
Yeah.
what you see off TV. What I was impressed with McFadzean is the stuff that you would never see on iFollow. So the guy never shuts up, does he? And there's constant marshalling of that defence, and you can see they are dancing to his tune, and you like.
Yeah.
That's really, really class. And it really, you kind of go, all right, there's clearly a lot more that I'm not seeing. Also, what I saw was a load of mistakes again, which then I sort of, on the other hand, was like, that you can see on iFollow. That's not a that's not a problem. But I have had to reassess his value for two reasons. One, from seeing him in the flesh and thinking, okay, there's clearly more to this guy than what you can see on TV. The second thing is, I think, oh God, I'm really struggling with this. Clark Salter, yeah?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Clark Salter is offering recovery pace that I think has took the whole back line onto another level this season. Is I just think that the fact now that McFadzean has got someone near him that actually might be able to bail him out a bit, I think we've looked so much more cohesive defensively with him there. I'm not even sure whether quality wise he's head and shoulders above someone like Rose, and he's certainly not, I wouldn't say, head and shoulders above Ostergaard. But I think dynamically as a back three, I felt really happy with looking at the three of them together because it just
Mm.
feels like they're a very neat unit. Is that me building a narrative in my head that doesn't exist, or have either of you felt the same?
I think that's actually crucial, especially when you do what we've done there, where you have a player like Rose who, by all accounts, performs well for us and would say he has a rightful place in that back three where you've got High McFadzean. And all of us would say we haven't got an issue with it. But what Robbins has had to do this season specifically is look at ways of leveling up, like Dom says, in terms of in areas and in places where you may not necessarily think that you need to, and yet it can just make that extra difference. And yeah, you're absolutely right when it comes to pace and recovery and just taking that defensive lineup, adding an extra element to what they're capable of. Those things are important. And I've seen bits and pieces of him, but what I saw the other day was a player who had that about him and, like you said, did appear probably broadly as a stronger prospect in that defence than Rose, which is a shame for Rose, but then it also means that we've still got Rose in the squad, and it's just about massaging that squad into place where you do have stronger options in positions where it's the Max Biamo thing up front thing, isn't it? I mean, not to get onto that topic, but I don't think he did anything wrong last year in the Championship, and yet there were just bits of his game which probably weren't at the level that needed to be. So we have to unfairly, from any perspective, get rid of him. But you're still making the squad stronger by ensuring that people who are coming in his place are just that little bit better. And it only needs to be a little bit better, but cumulatively, it makes so much more sense.
Very quickly on strikers that have left, my boss is a Bolton fan. Are you two aware that Bakayoko is playing largely on the right wing for Bolton and apparently doing quite a good job of it?
Oh, really? No, I did not know
Yeah.
that.
Could you even begin to imagine such a thing?
I can from his original YouTube video, what we saw when he came to us from Walsall, who a completely different player to the one that we actually saw. I like that version of Bucky. Okay, he was great, and then but it was because he was on the wing all the time. But I had no idea that they decided to go down that route again.
Uh, when they signed him, he asked me about him, and I said he'll be fine as long as you haven't got a game, as long as he isn't allowed to touch the football. and then he said he played on the right wing, and I was in the first game. I was like, you've got to be mistaken there because I don't think anybody would see him in training and be like, I know where you need to be. This is. This is They saw all the fantastic crosses that you whipped in for someone bigger and taller than Bakayoko in the box. It was
I
like,
need to have a look now.
really?
That'd be
Yeah, I
fascinating.
keep asking him about it. He's like, no, he's been really good. He's really like, really? Imagine if that was the problem. He's the only Cov striker that we have had that we haven't forced out onto the right wing at some point, and actually he's been the only one that would have been really
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah, that game against Bolton where we put Biamu out there.
Biamu on the left wing,
Bakayoko was the man.
we'll never forget that. That was. I'm not sure I've ever seen a player more out of place, other than
Yeah.
whenever Da Costa plays at all. Right, okay, so Lee, really lots and lots to be happy about. So I think, lest we carry on being happy, let's hope that we have a big downturn in more weeks, so that Paul's prepared to come back on and whinge about something. And let's move on to a couple of previews. So we've got Cardiff tomorrow night, and then Millwall on Saturday.
Correct.
Now, I don't know a lot about football, but that's two of the spiciest games in British football. Is that not right?
Yeah, yes, yeah, I suppose, yeah. Millwall, infamous for it, yeah, and Cardiff, yeah, have a bit of a reputation. I remember being in London the day they played Blackpool in the playoff final, the day Blackpool won the playoff to go to the Premier League, and they were very boisterous and not happy about being in England. So, uh, so yeah, they are a team that have been in a boom and bust cycle for the past 2 or 3 seasons, where bust and boom cycle, where they start the season poorly, they change their manager and shoot up the table. So the year before last, they got rid of Warnock and appointed Neil Harris, former Millwall striker manager, and he led them into the playoffs. And then he spent the following summer vowing to sort of evolve and start as quite an experienced physical squad, actually for a team put together largely by Neil Warnock, and that didn't really work. So then they thought, what is going to get the best out of a team in the image of Neil Warnock? Who's the closest we can get to Neil Warnock? Who's not Neil Warnock? So they've gone for Mick McCarthy, and he sort of did the same thing as Neil Harris did, where he said, forget about playing football really nicely. Let's sit back. We've got quick guys. We've got tall guys. That is a good formula. They shot up the table. They absolutely destroyed us back in February. It was just complete bullying for 45 minutes, and then just sort of holding it back and stop hitting yourself. Second half, um, they fell just short of the playoffs, and this year they're trying to make the playoffs. It's been a decent start without really taking off. They've got their tall guys. They've got their Kiefer Moore, who will probably come into the team for this game after sort of being a little bit short of fitness at the start of the season and being linked tentatively with a move away to the Premier League. He's a 6'4" striker. If you don't know anything about Kiefer Moore, he's an absolute giant and a little bit like Jacques really, where he's deceptively skillful as well. And yeah, just a huge presence who can really carry a team on his shoulders. And then at the back, they've got Sean Morrison, who is Ben Wilson's best mate. Marco Morosi's best mate. Definitely, yeah, Ben Wilson's best mate, given that he gave him a huge opportunity to play Championship football last season by absolutely covering Morosi when we played back in November. Yeah, he's a big experienced Championship centre back. Their top scorer is Aidan Flint, who is I think 6'6". He's massive and he loves scoring from set pieces. And supplementing that, they've got Will Volks, who's got a long throw, and someone else who is supplying the bullets for the tall guys at Cardiff is Ryan Giles, who he missed their last game through illness, so he might not play this game. Strange thing I noticed about Ryan Giles sort of over the summer, there's a lot of revisionism about how well he played for us based on the team's form. Whereas like when he played for us, everyone's like he's a good player. He's a big attacking threat. He just and yeah, he's a good left wing back. And then Sam McCallum came to the side, and we improved as a team because we need to do more defending. And then everyone just said Ryan Giles is absolutely rubbish, which I've
Really?
never really understood.
Who were these people?
I've seen a lot of people go, we for Ryan's decision to take McCallum out the side for Ryan Giles wasn't just because McCallum's more defensive, but because Ryan Giles was clearly terrible.
That's mad, isn't it?
No, I
Yeah.
thought he was good. I thought he
Yeah,
was
there's
good. Yeah.
a lot of people going, that was an amazing decision that everyone could see coming. Anyway, he's proved at Cardiff that he is a very good championship player.
4
And
assists so far,
yeah,
2.4 chances per game apparently.
yeah, and if you give someone quick like Ryan Giles, who likes to get crosses in, some tall guys to aim for, he is going to get a load of assists. Another player to watch out for, Ruben Colwell, who went to the European Championships this summer, shockingly ahead of Brennan Johnson for Wales, which, considering how well Brennan Johnson played against us, he must be good. And he's finally proved that at the weekend. 2 goals against Nottingham Forest. One was just sweeping up from a set piece situation, which is going to be where Cardiff are going to threaten a lot. Expect a lot of crossing into box, expect a lot of set pieces, long throws, all of that. They might not dominate the game, but they're always going to be in it for that reason. But Colwell, a little bit of a sort of magician in between the lines who can cause us different kinds of problems along with Giles. And then the final thing I mentioned about Cardiff is I'm hopeful that I might eventually get my gran to support us when we play against Cardiff. The last I put my previews out on Facebook, and sometimes my grandma comments on them. And before the last time we played Cardiff, she said, "Good luck, but I'm supporting Cardiff," and that was absolutely devastating. So, okay, on to Millwall now. Similar kind of prospect, although they've had a slightly indifferent start. 1 win in 6, but they don't look like a side that's going to struggle. It just looks like same old Millwall, where they're going to keep games very tight and they'll win some and they'll lose some. Same sort of, they've got tall guys. They've got Cooper, Wallace, and Hutchinson in defence, who are very tall. They've got Matt Smith, who's a giant in attack. They signed Benica Frobe, who's going to supplement their threat. And they've also got their between the lines magician in Jed Wallace, who has consistently been very good. It will be interesting to see whether they've learnt the lesson from last season when we played them of how to deal with players who play between midfield and attack. That was quite something, I thought. The game we played at the Den last year, they looked completely befuddled. And I mean, the 6-1 against them on the last day of the season, I think that was just a last day of the season occasion. But yeah, it would be interesting to see whether Mark Romans just goes for the 3-4-2-1 just because he's seen that do worse, and Millwall haven't changed that much. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting test this week. It's going to be interesting to see how we stack up. We did deal with that quite well against Middlesbrough, but against teams like Cardiff and Millwall, you can feel like you're in control of the game, but it can just take one cross, one set piece, and that's all they need. It's these what I like to call moments teams, where they're not teams that look to control or dominate, but they're relying on popping up at key moments, and they're resolute enough at the back to make sure games can come down to those margins.
It's what we're doing, really, isn't it? In a slightly different way.
Yeah, but I feel like we've been a team who could score more goals, but have been slightly held back by finishing / decision making. I don't think we've necessarily set out to win games by the odd goal, especially sort of not like towards the end of that League One promotion season where that felt very much. We felt very comfortable in restricting opponents. I know we could just pop up with something. I think there's yeah, we're just looking to control games a bit more.
The conundrum of this season is how has there been so few goals at either side? It feels like a team more spiritually akin to kind of early Presley at Northampton era. Do you know what I mean? Where what's it? Just sort of haymakers being thrown, but every game seems to be 1-0 or like 2-1 or whatever or 2-0. Like really small margins comparative, considering that we are like, do you know what I mean? It just seems to be
Yeah,
constant chances and constant attacking at either end, which is why it's been so fun. You get the impression that, especially with 2 games on the bounce here, one of those games is bound to have a lot more goals in. But then saying that is against the opposition that we've got, as you say, is you get the impression probably all 3 teams, such as they are, us and the 2 teams that we're playing, probably be reasonably content to keep the scores down, won't they?
very much so.
Right, okay. Do you have anything to plug? Any final thoughts? Anything that we need to say to the public before we go our separate ways? Neil?
No, I'm going to Millwall for the first time, so I'm looking forward to seeing just how killed I'll get. But yeah, that should be good fun.
Yeah, Godspeed you there. And Dom?
No, just usual. Check out the website. There will be stuff going on before and after every match. So just celebratesammy.com, and that's where I leave you.
Fabulous. Great to be a Cov fan, as I say, at the moment. Long may it continue. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Dom.
Cheers, bye.
We'll be back whenever we decide to be back. Bye.